It is another edition of Time About the Movies, and today we're wrapping up September 2008, September 26th to be exact, with 5 movies to look at. Once again, a wide assortment of different movies. We have DJ Caruso and Shia LaBeouf following up their success with Disturbia the year before with a new action thriller, Eagle Eye. Nicholas Sparks, the author of The Notebook, one of his books comes to life in a brand new movie. We have a couple of good movies that a lot of people don't really remember all that much. Spike Lee's newest film, as well as a film with Sam Rockwell, based off the book from the writer of Fight Club. So we have some films to get to here, and also we have an independent movie based off the faith market that kind of was a trend center for everything that's been going forward since then. We'll get to that in just a little bit, but first let's talk about the biggest new release of the weekend, and that is the Disturbia follow-up for DJ Caruso and Shia LaBeouf. That is Eagle Eye. They were very smart in how they marketed this movie. They first premiered the trailer for this in front of Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. Of course, Shia LaBeouf was in that movie. And they really sucked a lot of people in with that trailer. I was really invested to see how this was going to turn out. I mean, I really liked Disturbia. And Shia LaBeouf at the time was really starting to begin this trend where everyone thought he was going to be the next big Bruce Willis-like star, where, you know, he started his career off in television with Even Stevens, of course, and then eventually grew his film repertoire and started making these really good movies, and then he got involved with Steven Spielberg with stuff like Disturbia, as I mentioned, Transformers, of course, and then Eagle Eye, which were all produced by Spielberg, and they're all made by DreamWorks. So kind of like how Bruce Willis started off with Moonlighting and then followed that with Die Hard to become the big action star. Chris Pratt also went down that same route too. And they were very smart in how they promoted the movie, because they're showing you the stuff that gets you kind of intrigued on how this film's going to turn out. For the first half of it, it's really good. The second half, not so much. But you have the story of two strangers, played by LaBeouf and Michelle Monaghan, who are forced to go on the run together after receiving a mysterious phone call from an unknown woman with the voice of Julianne Moore, who uses information and communications technology to track their every move. And for the first half of it, you're along for the ride. It's a very intriguing story. You get a sense of, you know, North by Northwest. Like, this guy has no idea why he's getting involved in this situation, even though he has a twin brother who looks like him. And for the first half of it, you go along for the ride. It gets really stupid, but the film is doing a good job consistently with the first half that you're like, okay, I can get along with this. Where the film really starts to fall apart, though, is when there's a scene in the middle of the movie where they're with these other people and they're trying to run away from something, and these power lines are starting to fall apart. Like, they're with the electricity still on, and one of the people that is chasing after is with them gets eviscerated, and it's just completely vaporized by this strike, and it's just like, that is where the movie then starts to fall apart. Like, if this was a roller coaster, that scene is the tipping point, and then following that, that's where we go careening down the hill. Because after that, man, this thing gets way too preposterous and way too complicated for its own good. There's a subplot where Michelle Monaghan basically has to go in and kill, like, a political figure or something. There's a part where the agents are kind of secretly double-crossers that really does come out of nowhere, and they don't really do a good job of establishing the ideas of what they were trying to set up for the first time around, and they really just completely go off the deep end here. And yeah, it definitely hurts the movie in the long run. It's a film where I was really liking it at first, but then when that second half begins, that's where it kind of goes careening off the hill. Now, it's not a bad movie. Like I said, the first half I think is more than enjoyable enough. The action sequences throughout the film are very good. I like Shia LaBeouf and Michelle Monaghan working off each other. I think the main cast overall is very good. Rosario Dawson's in this, Michael Chiklis, Anthony Mackie, Billy Bob Thornton, Julianne Moore, but it's the story and the plot twists and turns that really kind of ruins the ebb and flow of the movie. I think when it falls into standard routine territory for a film like this, that's where it really starts to fall apart in the long run. And it doesn't completely kill my overall enjoyment of the movie, but it's definitely a part where it really, really does fall apart. And the first half definitely is the stronger part of this movie. After that, it kind of falls apart pretty quickly, but hey, it was a box office hit. It made a lot of money. It made over $100 million. It proved that Shia LaBeouf's star power was still very much there in general. And you still see it played on TV today. I'll always remember this movie for, of all things, one of the last things I saw when I was out of Ocelli's Pizza in Monroeville before the COVID pandemic. No joke. If you ever seen one of the movie stop episode I did before the COVID pandemic happened, I went to Vocelli's and and I show a little bit of the television, and it shows Eagle Eye playing on the television. I guess it was playing on TNT at that time. And that's kind of how I somehow remember this movie. It was the last movie I saw before the world basically shut down for several months because of the pandemic. But it does go to show you that, 12 years after this movie came out, the film still has, still is shown on television. It was a big hit, so it's still a film that you see on TV every once in a while. So it does have its legacy behind it overall. But, yeah, like I said, it's not a bad movie overall. I think the first half definitely is the strongest part of it. The second half, it does take a lot of the enjoyment out of it because of how crazy and ridiculous it gets, but it's never enough for me to say that it's a film you should completely avoid. It's a film where it's just kind of like, it's there. It's nothing too amazing, nothing too spectacular, but the first half definitely is the strongest part of the film. Other than that, yeah, you can avoid the rest of it overall. But it's a decent movie overall. For a one-time watch, I'd say it's perfectly fine for that, So with that said, let's go ahead and move on to our next movie, and that is Richard Gere and Diane Lane in their first film together since Unfaithful, and Nicholas Sparks' first feature film since The Notebook came out, Nights in Rodanthe.
Nights in Rodanthe.
And as you can tell, we are definitely not going on the same levels as The Notebook with this movie. This is a pretty bad movie, and basically was an indication that The Notebook was a one-trick pony that worked because there was good talent in terms of the acting and the directing. Here, you've got the good acting, the story. I mean, it's not that much. It basically kind of gives you an indication of every Nicholas Sparks story ever made, pretty much. But Diane Lane plays a woman whose life is in crisis and in chaos and retreats to the tiny coastal town of Rodanthe in the Outer Banks of North Carolina to tend to her friend's inn, the friend being played by Viola Davis. Here she hopes to find the tranquility, so she desperately needs to rethink the conflict surrounding her. A wayward husband who is asked to come home, a teenage daughter who resents her every direction, and almost as soon as she gets there, a major storm is forecasted, and a guest played by Richard Gere arrives. The only guest at the inn, because why not? You could pretty much tell that Viola Davis set this whole thing up, and he's not on a weekend escape, but rather is there to face his own crisis of consciousness. Now with the storm closing in, the two turn to each other for comfort, and in one magical weekend set an emotional, life-changing romance that will resonate through the rest of their lives, and blah, 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 blah. It's the same damn movie that we've seen from Nicholas Sparks with every single one of his adaptations. Two people meet, and so that automatically they're supposed to have a story that's supposed to be, heartfelt and romantic, and no, it just doesn't work. I mean, it worked with The Notebook, but that was a one-trick pony that worked once, because every single one of these movies that he's done since then, Message in a Bottle, A Walk to Remember, and then following this, Dear John, The Last Song, The Lucky One, Safe Haven, The Best of Me, it's the same movie every single time. Just put two different people in there, and it's basically the same movie. It's the same formula done to death so many times, and it doesn't work every time. It only worked once with The Notebook. Here, I get it. Richard Gere and Diane Lane are great actors. They've worked together before. They've worked on The Cotton Club. They worked on Unfaithful. Two really good two movies that actually worked. This one, everything about this one just feels forced. The storm, of course the storm has to come when there's only one person, and it just so happened to be someone who's in the same age bracket as Diane Lane. I mean, what are the odds? I mean, honestly, this film is so derivative, so schmaltzy, so gimmicky. Yeah, I know I'm using the critical consensus for Rotten Tomatoes, but there's no other really way to describe this except the fact that, it's a film that is so forced. Everything about this movie is so forced. The chemistry that both Diane Lane and Richard Gere have in here, it just does not work. It does not work in any way, shape, or form because the situation is so ridiculous. And if any other person would be in that same situation here, in real life, one person would be seen as the monster, and that's probably the guy in that situation, but, and not if it's, but no, Richard Gere has to be a nice guy and all that, and, this movie just doesn't work. This movie is so lazily put together, and it's just not fun in any way, shape, or form. It's a lousy movie. It's a terrible film. You can avoid this one like the plague, so. With that said, let's go ahead and move on to one of the more surprise successes of this weekend, Kirk Cameron starring in Fireproof. So yeah, this was a movie that really came out of nowhere. Nobody was expecting to do the money that this thing did, and it went on to become a massive success that, like I said, nobody really saw coming in any way, shape, or form. But you have the story of Caleb and Catherine Holt's, whose marriage is in crisis, and they're contemplating divorce. However, Caleb's father proposes that his son should delay their separation for 40 days and follow a procedure called the love date to reignite their love. And Caleb is played by Kirk Cameron, who is notoriously known now for these movies. But you also have Catherine Holt, played by Aaron Bethia. And actually, Kirk Cameron's real wife, Chelsea Noble, did the supposed body double for this, because apparently there were scenes where they had to reconcile and Cameron wouldn't kiss any woman but his wife. So I guess you take that for what you will. But yeah, this was a film that nobody really saw coming as a success. I mean, this is a film that ordinarily would not do well in any way, shape, or form, but because the people who marketed this movie, Samuel Goldwyn apparently hired a really good marketing team, because they sold this to a lot of Christian groups, churches, pastors, and they basically had people come out to see these movies at group screenings, and the film ended up doing really, really well. It brought in $6 million for a film that only cost $500,000 to make. It went on to have this big gross of $33 million, which for a film like this was unprecedented at the time. Nobody really expected to see this one coming as a success that it was. And it became a big hit on DVD, too. And it kind of set the tone for what was to come for these faith-based movies, which are still coming out even to this very day. You've had successes like Courageous, which was another success that really came out of nowhere. War Room was another one that really came out of nowhere. Heaven is for Real. And then the major studios started getting more involved in producing more of these faith-based movies, which most of them were not very successful, but sometimes you got a good one here and there. Like, I thought American Underdog, the Kurt Warner story, was really good. And Jesus Revolution, the one with Kelsey Grammer, was one that I thought I was not going to expect to like, but I actually did kind of like it. But then again, it's got Kelsey Grammer, and that guy will usually never turn in a bad performance. But it just goes to show you what this significant film really did, and how it basically opened the door for every other studio to go like, these faith-based movies could turn out to actually be worth something. We actually put the money into it. And lo and behold, it had one of these impressive grassroots campaigns that, is something that we still see with a lot of movies to this very day. A lot of these movies did not get a whole lot of advertising, but they find their way with audiences. They find their way with people at churches and all that, and it worked to the film's favor. Now, as far as the film itself goes, I can't really say if it's any good or not, because I've never seen it, and honestly, I've never really had any real intentions on checking it out per se. I'd never get really attached to these movies in particular, but like I said, I've seen a couple of ones here and there that were kind of decent overall, but this one, I've just never really gotten around to checking it out, but probably isn't that bad overall. I mean, it's got decent reviews on not the best reviews overall, I should say, not really decent, but I've seen much worse in terms of movies like this with critical reviews, and I don't know. It's just one that I've never really had the urge to really go out and see, so that's Fireproof. Let's go ahead and move on to the next film we have here. We're getting back to the good stuff now. This is the next two films are probably my favorite films of this entire weekend. Starting off with Spike Lee's latest film, the World War II drama Miracle at St. Anna. This really is one of Spike Lee's most underrated movies as a filmmaker. It's a film that kind of came and went, didn't really leave much of an impact at the box office, and was largely passed over by most critics overall, but it was a movie I really, really enjoyed. It really shows you how far Spike Lee has come since the days of Do the Right Thing and Malcolm X and Jungle Fever, and shows that the guy has a lot of talent across the board as a filmmaker still, even after all these years. But the story of Miracle at St. Anna follows 4 members of the U.S. Army's all-black 92nd Infantry Division, the Buffalo Soldiers, that are trapped behind enemy lines after one of them risks his life to save a traumatized Italian boy. Separated from their unit, they find themselves at this remote Tuscan village where they experience the tragedy and the triumph of war. And this really is one of Spike Lee's most underrated movies, with a strong cast of really good talent. Derek Luke, Michael Ealy, Laz Alonso, Omar Benson Miller, who you know is Raphael from the Rise of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. You have John Turturro in here, Joseph Gordon-Levitt, Kerry Washington. The movie really is well done. It's a very impressive-looking film, and it's a really captivating story about these 4 guys who, you don't usually get to see stories like this told from the different perspectives of the war. Like, we've had 2 war movies from Clint Eastwood, Flags of Our Fathers and Letters from Iwo Jima, showing the different sides of the Americans and the Japanese, but now we have a story about these 4 black soldiers who, they're the focus of the film, and it works really well to the advantages of the film. I think it's a very well-made movie, a well put together film, a film that is very much an underrated movie, and one I really do think a lot of people really should give another shot at. And like I said, it just goes to show how Spike Lee, this is what Spike Lee's capable of doing. He's not just making movies like Do the Right Thing or Jungle Fever. He's capable of making epic films like this, epic war movies like this, and I think it really is a very good, well-made film. And it showed that he was back in form, because there was a little bit of a streak there where he was making less than spectacular movies, and then he followed that up recently with a lot of really good movies like Chirac, Black Klansman, Da 5 Bloods. But this is a film that really shows a lot of what this guy's capable of doing. And I think it's a very good, underrated film. Definitely one you want to check out. Miracle at St. Anna. I can't recommend this one enough. So with that said, let's go ahead and move on to the last one we have here, and that's Sam Rockwell in Choke. The movie overall is just really well done. This is a film that, and it's also directed by Agent Coulson from from The Avengers. Clark Gregg directed this movie, based, of course, on the novel by Chuck Palahniuk from Fight Club, of course. You have a story of Sam Rockwell, who works in a colonial theme park and attends sexual addiction recovery meetings, and intentionally chokes on food in upscale restaurants so his rescuers get him money out of sympathy, and thus covers his mother's Alzheimer's disease hospital bills. The mother, played by Angelica Houston. Of course, he has a friend, Brad William Henneke. But then it gets complicated when he gets into a situation with this doctor, played by Kelly MacDonald. She's very religious and wants to have a baby, and it just, like I said, it gets very complicated overall, but it's done very well. It's a very funny movie. It's a very smart comedy, and it works because everybody is just game for this. Everybody's working their asses off here. They're acting hard. It's a really good, fun movie. It's a very well-made film. If you ever seen the show Hung on HBO with Thomas Jane, it's kind of like that in a way. Like, it's a really good show. That's definitely one you want to check out. And if you like that, you're going to love the hell out of this. I think this is a really good movie. It shows what Clark Gregg's capabilities are as a director, for the fact that he's mostly known for his acting works. His great acting works on The Avengers, of course, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., The New Adventures of Old Christine. I mean, there's a lot of things to admire about the movie. It's a very funny movie. It's a very smart film, a very good satirical parody, a very good dark comedy. We don't usually get movies like this anymore. I mean, most comedies, I think they play it way too safe nowadays, even the raunchy comedies, but sometimes you get a good one every once in a while, no hard feelings. But yeah, this is one you might want to check out. It's a really good, underrated film with a lot of really good people involved in here, and just a lot of really good talent all across the board here. It's a very fun film. I really enjoyed this one a lot. I think it's a very enjoyable film. One I highly recommend checking out. Choke is one that definitely needs a lot more attention than it gets. It's a very enjoyable film. I enjoyed the hell out of it. And so with all that said, we're going to wrap this edition of Time About the Movies up, but we have a lot of movies to start October off. We got 8 movies to look at, including Beverly Hills Chihuahua from Disney, directed by Raja Gosnell, Michael Cera and Kat Dennings starring in Nick and Nora's Infinite Playlist, David Zucker back with a new spoof movie, An American Carol. Bill Maher with a new movie, Religulous. Greg Kinnear in a new film, Flash of Genius. Julianne Moore, we just heard her in Eagle Eye. Blindness, she has that movie out. Simon Pegg with another comedy where he's the lead, How to Lose Friends and Alienate People. And Rachel Getting Married with Anne Hathaway. And a lot of movies to get to next time around, so it'll be a very long show next time. So definitely check it out tomorrow. But until then, thank you so much for watching, and if you want to see more videos like this, please go ahead and hit the playlist on the next page, check out the previous episode, and also don't forget to hit the like, subscribe, notification button, and the bell. That's when you get updates when new videos come out, and we do post new videos here every day. So with all that said, I'm off. I'll see you guys next time, and until then, as always, take care.